嗱，啱啱聽咗一啲 case 咧，就喺越南啦，點樣攞到 microfinance 之後咧，可以改變，慢慢改變佢哋嘅生活啦。咁咧，阿 Jennifer 可以再講多啲咧唔同嘅例子俾我哋聽下咧 ，microfinance 可以點樣幫到啲窮人嘅 ？Jennifer, we can talk more brilliant cases now. How about in India? You have some stories about microfinance, right?
Sure, but actually I was just in China. I'd love to talk about China.
Okay,
so I made a trip recently to Inner Mongolia.
Oh, Mongolia.
So flew from Beijing to Chifeng and then drove to a town called, I'm not going to get the tones right, but Daban.
And you learned about it already?
Yeah, I'm trying Daban. But essentially went out to a village there that it was fascinating for me to see the transformation in this particular village. Inner Mongolia is one of the poorer parts of China, and this was actually a Mongolian village. So when I was trying to communicate, we were translating from English to Mandarin to Mongolian and back again.
Okay.
This was a town that 10 years ago, was on the Gobi Desert, struggling to survive. People trying to make ends meet day to day, month to month, year to year. They received access to microfinance services, as I mentioned, about 10 years ago. When we drove into this village, when I drive into a village, what I tend to look for are a couple of things to sort of get a sense for the poverty levels. The first is to look at the homes. A home will tell you a lot about the poverty level of the person living in it. The construction of the roofs, in terms of the permanence of the material, the construction of the walls, how well the building is made. Is it made out of mud? Is it made out of wood? Is it made out of tin, cement, and other things? The first thing I'll notice is I was stunned by the homes that were there. These were all permanent structures made of brick or cement in some form with multiple rooms. What was particularly interesting is next to them were often these little, tiny, squalid conditions, small, tiny huts that had only 5 to 7 years ago been the homes of these people and were actually now the homes of their animals. And that's the sign of transformation, as a starting point. I met the women in this village, and one of the things that I also look for is how the women interact with me. You talked about India. One of the things that you often find, and I'm actually wearing an appropriate thing, is women will cover their heads or won't look at me, so they will cover their heads. In the village, the women would look straight in my eyes and look straight at me and speak directly to me. It's not often that you get a foreigner with blonde hair in the village, but the confidence of the women is there. So there's an empowerment element. Then as I started talking to them, I looked at their health. They all looked well fed. The teeth were in very good condition. But then you ask them about their lives. We were able to send our children to school. My child finished high school or went on to university. We are able to eat better. We're eating meat every day. So it's this sort of ongoing transformation, but then also to look at the accumulation of, and when I say assets, are things that you could turn into cash in the event of an emergency or something. So in that particular environment, goats, they can use the goats in a number of different ways. It provides income. One, at the end of the year, they can sell the goat for slaughter. During the year, they can shave the goat and use the wool and sell that. And they can also milk the animal to get milk. So it's a multiple source of income for this family. Looking at this village of 200 people, it was a village-wide transformation, and I think that speaks very powerfully to the opportunity that access to finance has for people, not just the women involved, but the larger community.
But how about, you told me the interesting story in India, they sell the airtime of the mobile phone?
Yeah, sure. This is fantastic. The intersection between microfinance and technology is increasing. It started in Bangladesh. Professor Yunus's vision of changing the lives of the poor did not stop with microfinance. He often says that's the prerequisite. It starts the motor, but once you give people other opportunities, it's amazing what they can do with it. So technology was the second place he moved, and in Bangladesh they started with village phone business. Essentially, Grameen Bank would provide a loan to a woman in a village to purchase a cell phone, and she would become the payphone outlet in the village, because you didn't have access to phones in the villages. So mobile phones skip the whole landline generation, and you had a person who became a voice center in the village. Mobile phone usage has exploded, particularly in Asia. So most people have phones. What we've seen in Indonesia, and this is a program that Grameen Foundation has done, is how do you take this concept of village phone operators to the next level? What you're doing is creating a business for a poor woman to supplement her income. And so what we've done there is not just making the person the source of voice communication in the village, but also selling airtime. Unlike in Hong Kong, most people prepay for using the cell phone.
A month.
Yeah, exactly.
1,000 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. They do that. But what's interesting, so today the rupiah is about 10,500 rupiah to the US dollar. They're selling it in as small chunks as 1,000 rupiah, 10 cents. I actually still haven't figured out what someone can do with 10 cents of time for a mobile phone.
It's just faster.
I know, exactly.
It's going to end, faster.
Exactly. But actually, we have people there, and I visited, who are getting 30 to 60 customers a day to support that business.
But they don't have their own cell phone, they have to buy the airtime?
Yeah, essentially what you do is you think of it like a micro franchise.
Okay.
So the way my colleague explained this to me to understand the power of it is he said, I don't think I could open and run a restaurant, but I could own and open a franchise of a restaurant. It's like a McDonald's or a Subway or something like that. So what we're talking about is creating like a business in a box. A microfinance institution provides a loan to a poor woman. She uses that to buy a box, which includes a cell phone, a charger, a banner that she uses for marketing material, and also basic instructions for how to make this business work and what to do in case of problems and things. So that's how you create this micro franchise business that allows a person to develop themselves and move beyond sort of the skills that they do or do not have, as in many cases illiterate, innumerate.
It's so inspiring. Just small business, small loan, then you can start with small, right? Maybe you can big business.
Yeah, well, I had a really interesting, so I visited 2 families a few weeks ago, and I asked one of them, because one of the families they had a bunch of different things. They had diversified the different ways they tried to earn money. So in the front of their home, they sold wood, they sold liquid petroleum gas, so LPG, they sold vegetables, they sold noodles, they sold rice by the handful. So they had all these different businesses. So I asked the family, which of these businesses is the most profitable? And they thought about it for a second, and they said, it's this village phone business selling airtime. And I said, interesting. And they went on to explain to me something that really transformed my thinking about the poor. They said, they don't define profitable the way we do. They said it's the most steady and reliable source of income we have, and we can count on it every month. So where we think about return, they're thinking about reliability. It was a very powerful moment. I thought it was
it's sustainability.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's talking sustainable development. They got it.
Exactly. They're on the cutting edge of all of these things.
And I'm just thinking that you quote so many cases, most of them related to women. Is it a very obvious phenomenon that women got the money not going to shopping but to do some business for the family?
Yeah, this is a sensitive and conversation to have, especially when you have a largely male audience. But we are involved in microfinance as a means to transform lives. None of these social entrepreneurs thought they would be bankers, know, and that being a banker would transform lives, but they've come to see the power of microfinance. So if your goal is transforming lives, then you have to work with the person most incented to transform lives. As we discussed earlier, I was mentored in this space by the person who first replicated Grameen Bank outside of Bangladesh, so in Malaysia. And essentially what he said to me is you can never underestimate the power of a woman to want to transform the lives of her children. The incentive she has to put every penny towards her family. That's why we focus on women. Grameen Bank even started with men, but they found that the reliability, the incentive to transform lives, particularly those of the children, and to put every penny towards that was women.
it's different.
Yeah.
It's a gender
Yeah.
difference. Okay.